I have been asked the same question, I would guess 1,000 times, and that's probably an expression. It could be more like 90 times. But you know how that is? You get asked something 90 times. You go, I've been asked this 10,000 times. You know how it feels like that? Which is, Chael, tell us a tough guy story that we've never heard before. Tell me a tough guy story that you've never talked about, we haven't heard. Now, I always interpret that to mean, and here's the reason I never do it. I interpret that to mean practice room story. And I can't do it. I've seen things in the practice room, but it's not just me. We all do, and there's a code, and we don't ever talk about it. And I've discussed that with you before, so I always ignore the question. This is my first time addressing the question. I'm addressing the question by telling you I'm going to avoid it completely, but I have to. But it's still the question that keeps coming up. Over and over again, tell us a tough guy story. And a tough guy story for me is a little bit more sophisticated of a question than it's meant to be, because what is a tough guy? What is a tough guy? Is the tough guy the one that can bench press more? Is the tough guy, maybe he's got a good jab and he's really quick with it, he can beat you up? Is that what a tough guy is? Because it's not necessarily for me. It's not. Tough guy doesn't just come down to the physicality. There has to be a mental side to it. There has to be a courage. There has to be a bravery. There has to be a willingness. And that willingness is not just to put it on the line for victory and glory. It's knowing full well that you only have a 50% chance of that. The other 50% chance is that you're going to lose. You're going to be defeated. The train is going to stop running down the tracks, at least for a moment, and then you're going to have to reset and regroup, which is a very difficult thing to do. It's not just physical. Now you're in a mental exercise. I had to train one time, guys. I got a 2-year suspension. I had practice. I got suspended that day, and practice was that night. So I go to practice. It's the first time I saw Coach Clayton. And Coach Clayton told me we have 2 years. 2 years is going to seem like an eternity. We're going to practice on the same schedule every single day. And he said to me, this is not a physical exercise you're going through. You are now in a mental exercise. And it was so difficult to see light at the end of that tunnel, to come in day after day training for nothing. I'd never been in that spot before. I had never worked out for the sake of working out. Everything had a purpose. There was goals, there was dates, there was deadlines, there was matches, there was weigh-ins, there was travel, there was competition, reset the tape. It was all built in with structure. It was a mental exercise. But that mental side of it, I'm not proud of being suspended, but I am proud of getting through that mental hurdle, which I'll just share with you was difficult to do. So I got to see a mental side. That's just me. I think that you will agree with me on that, but even if you don't, I'm at least just sharing from my perspective. When you talk about a tough guy, there has to be something at risk. It can't just be banging your chest and look cool and being believable when you do it. If you get called on it, are you the guy that comes as advertised? Do you guys know who Jocko Willink is? You've heard of Jocko? I'm assuming you have. Jocko Willink, for me, is a tough guy. He passed the test. Here's what happened. It was many years ago. 2016, maybe 2015, maybe 2017, somewhere right in there, a number of years ago, we're doing Submission Underground. We're going to put a match on. And the guys at Flow wanted a military match. Tim Kennedy versus Jocko. And once we get this signed and billed, we're going to bring it in. But this is what the storyline is going to be, these two military men. Okay. So I call Jocko. And I ask him if he wants to do the match. Jocko accepts the match on the spot. Right on the spot. And Jocko's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Dean Lister. Jocko's entered tournaments. He's competitive, but he has other interests. He is not single tunnel visioned. Not in the least would he qualify as that. He has other interests. He's curious about a lot of things. He's a very, very busy guy. So buckling down and training and learning all of these things to go and get his hand raised, it's just not really in the wheelhouse, but it is something that he does. It's something that he likes to do. He understood the story, had got where that could bring positive attention, and he was willing to take a challenge. Now, he is very unlikely, if we're to be fair, to defeat Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy at that time was single, tunnel vision, was absolutely locked in on the physical and mental aspects of defeating an opponent in one-on-one competition. Jocko accepted the match on the spot. Now, that's not what I appreciate about him. That was a cool move. Okay. But I could have got that from a lot of guys, in fairness. Jocko doesn't know what that match pays to this day. He doesn't know because he never asked me. Jocko does not know what the rules to that match were. He doesn't know because I never told him. Jocko doesn't know how long the match was going to be. He doesn't know because he never asked. He accepted it on the spot, period. Here we are, 4 to 5 years later, and Jocko has never taken credit. He's never told the story. He's never acknowledged or tried to shine his own wheels for having the courage to go in and accept a fight. Tim Kennedy was ranked number 5 in the world at that time. Tim Kennedy had just done a ground fight. It was MMA rules, but it was all on the ground against Hodger Gracie, and Tim won. With Hodger on his back for over 3 minutes, and Tim still won, right? I mean, there was nothing about this that was right for Jocko, and in all fairness, in our industry, you will give a guy credit for showing bravery, for showing willness. We're seeing that right now, just by example, just so you don't have to try to think back. Right now, what is going on with Khamzat Chimaev and the very few guys who are willing and asking for that match are getting a boost in popularity. They're getting a different level of respect. Jocko knows that. Jocko's a black belt in this. He knew exactly that he could have put himself over. He wouldn't have to put Tim down at all. He's a guy with many interests, Jocko, who happens to have a black belt and likes to compete. The end. And he was willing to step in there against the number 5 guy in the world, who, by the way, was younger than him and probably, I don't know what Jocko weighs, but probably a little bit more fit at the time. He never said anything. He's never told any of you. I know you don't know that story. I listened to some of Jocko's stuff that never came up. And there's a piece of that that satisfies the criteria that I personally need for what is a tough guy. For having the courage, for being able to risk it, for being willing to go out there and risk it against anybody who happens to do the same thing that you do and is agreeing to follow the rules of the sport. You know how many times I've been on calls with guys? Big names that you respect. I've been on phone calls with guys that say, I will do it if, and then they try to change a fundamental rule of the sport. Time is a big one. Heel hooks come up a lot. Position and advantages and what you're going to do when you get into overtime. Just by example, we would have these actual conversations. The conversation stops right there. It would never, I don't have the power or the ability to change the sport any more than if you guys are put on a basketball game and all of a sudden you say that a basket's worth 1 point instead of 2. That's not how the game is played. You are now doing something else, right? You're now doing something different. That is not what basketball is. It's the same thing in the sport of grappling, just by example, which is what we were talking about. I have no ability, not to mention would I ever do it even if I did have a magic wand, to change the rules of an event. This is what the event is. If this is the game that you play, then these are the rules that you follow. Big names that I could tell you about that have turned matches down and missed opportunities because there was not a manipulation of the rules. And the manipulation within the rules, of course and obviously, is designed to favor them, which is weird. It's a weird thing to even ask, but the way that I will look at them and the respect that I have for them will change forever. I won't come out and talk about it. Private conversation's a private conversation. I'm not naming names, now or ever. But I'm a human being. I heard the words, and it changes the way I look at them. I'm a human being. I saw and heard what Jocko had to say about taking on the number 5 guy in the world with very little preparation, having no carrot dangled in front of him, not knowing the time so that he could even show up in shape and unfamiliar with the rules. He said one word, and the word was yes.